Hi, everyone. My name is Alyssa,
And I'm Toni.
and we're the co-founders of Arts and Wellness Collective Soultry Sisters. Our mission is to empower communities of color to live vibrant and shine bright through soul care, creative expression, sustainability, and collective healing. We are community partners with the Hill Street Country Club and enjoy creating programs, events, workshops in our hometown of Oceanside. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and feel free to share in the comments where you are tuning in from.
Yes, so I'm so excited to be here for this series or the last episode of the series. And today's conversation is centered around radical soul care. And as Soultry Sisters, we define soul care as any activity that helps us connect to our mind, our body, and spirit or soul. And so most people might be more familiar with the term self-care, but us as Soultry, we try to distinguish what we do from self-care because that term has been often co-opted by the wellness community, by the beauty industry, and many other industries to promote consumerism. And that's not what Soultry is about. And so we believe soul care is as simple as going for a walk, listening to your favorite playlist, and finding like a quiet space to read a book. So it doesn't have to be something you buy. And Angela Davis coined the term radical self care. And that has really inspired us as Soultry Sisters. And Angela Davis has said that anyone who's interested in making change in the world also has to learn to take care of themselves. So that is kind of the premise of what we'll be talking about today.
Yes, and we believe soul care is a practice of self-preservation, but for sustainable change we have to be radical about it. So when we talk about self-preservation, we talk about wanting, like according to Angela Davis, grasping things at the root. And for Soultry Sisters, being radical means creating from a place of wholeness and centering the work we do on collective healing.
Yeah, and through this series, our community and conversation series, we have spoken with different local artists and leaders who are part of the Hill Street Country Club community. And you can catch all of those recordings as well if you missed those. And during these discussions, we share different ways that they individually sustain themselves, and also the different roles that they play in supporting social change within our communities.
Yes, so before we get started, we just want to say hello to everyone who's in the chat with us, who's in the live. We want to say hi to Janelle, our Soultry sister from Seoul, Korea. How are you doing? Thanks for joining us. So yes, this live we want to be interactive. So throughout this live, we're going to be asking you questions. So we definitely encourage you throughout this live to use the comment box to chat with us. And if you're joining in, we're asking everyone who's joining in the live to let us know where you are tuning in from. Hi, Chanel. She says, hi, ladies.
Yay!
Yay.
Yes, we're so happy to have everyone joining us today. And also, we do have a workshop on Saturday, so we'll be talking more about that later on. But yes, so excited.
Yes, so to start off this, so for our series, for our Radical Soul Care community conversation, our whole intention with having this community conversation was to introduce ourselves to the Hill Street community, but also having Hill Street community being able to introduce themselves to our Soultry community. So the first series, we interviewed artist in residence Johnny Wynn. He's an activist and local photographer here in San Diego. And then our second week, we had Dinah Polanitz, who is one of the co-founders of the Hill Street Country Club. So we're so happy that we were able to have those two conversations. And we decided that the third part and final part of this Radical Soul Care series, it would only be right for us to introduce ourselves to the Hill Street Country Club and get to know all of you and let you know a little bit about us. So we're going to have Toni start. She's going to tell us a little about herself and what she does.
Yes, so I am one half of the Soultry Sisters, obviously, and right now I'm currently a grad student, so I'm getting my master's in public health, and I'm concentrating in global health epidemiology. So I'm passionate about studying the root causes of dis-ease, and specifically women's wellness and health. And so I've done like a lot of work in like health prevention, health promotion, disease prevention, health promotion. And I specialize in more like sexual and reproductive health. But if anyone follows my Instagram account, you know that I dip and dabble in all types of different social justice issues, whether it's climate change to women's health. Today is also National Birth Control. Thanks Birth Control Day. So I did post about that as well.
That's awesome. So before I introduce myself, I want to give y'all space to introduce yourself. Let us know what you're passionate about, maybe something you're passionate about, maybe a hobby, or if you want to let us know what it is that you do. We love to hear from you. For me, I am an artist, educator, and creator. I went to UC Irvine and received my degree, my BFA in choreography and performance. So my career has been mainly focused on performing, and now I'm focusing on having my own company called Continuum. So I'm focusing more on choreographing and focusing on artist development. So that's really what my passion is right now. I'm also a Pilates practitioner. So I'm passionate about anything to do with moving the body. I'm also like passionate about creative expression as well. So that's a little bit about what I do. As far as an educator, I teach dance, I teach movement, I teach choreography, and being a creator, doing Soultry Sisters, that's something I'm really passionate about as well. So that's a little bit about me.
Yeah. And I guess some fun facts about both of us. So we're from San Diego, but specifically Oceanside. So that's our hometown. Both Alyssa and I went to Oceanside High School, so we're Pirates. And then for undergrad, we both also went to University of California, Irvine. So zap, if any of you are familiar, Chanel. And then we both dance and all that stuff. So we do have a lot in common. And we're both Pisces. So
yes. Both opposite sides of the Pisces spectrum. She's the beginning and I'm the end. So although we're very similar, we're also very different. If you want to drop in your zodiac sign in the chat, we'd love to know as well. So now that we're in this chat, we really want to focus on defining what radical means to us. So what radical means to us, what radical means to you. So you can use the chat to let us know, what does radical mean to you? For me, I really do believe it's like I think of radical as the same light as Angela Davis, is pulling something at its root. When I think about being radical in my life, I think about being intentional. Like when I'm asking myself, like, what is it that I need today? I want to get to the root of it. So if I need rest, that's a radical act. If I need to eat, that's a radical act. So that's what radical means to me, is like getting to the bottom of what I need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me, when I think of radical, especially this past year, is like doing what's against the norm or what's normal. So yeah, like the last few months, rest has been a radical act in my soul care practice. But something like rest is so natural, right? Like our bodies will go to sleep if it is exhausted. So it's like ingrained in our human body, but at the same time, like our norms in like society is that like, oh, we have to work so hard, or there's that like that common phrase like, oh, I'll sleep when I'm dead. So it's like we think rest is a luxury. So that's just one example of like something that I feel like is radical, is just going against the grain. And then especially kind of like the work I do in public health, for me, a lot of my previous work like can't always be super radical, because like the different organizations that working for a health department, you kind of have to follow the lines and the box and the guidance that you have. But now being a grad student, like just being able to study the stuff I want to study, then I can kind of be a little bit more radical in like the way I write about some of these issues. But yeah, and just kind of for me and like my work that I do, radical is like pointing out again like what's not happening, and also radical is like staying true to who you are. And I feel like that's kind of my personal work that I do with myself and my own journey, is like staying true. Yeah.
No, I hear that. And like now also adding on to my definition of radical, when I think about how I am radical in the meaning of the work that I do, I studied different types of dance. I danced all my life, and going to school for dance, I learned the history of dance and where it comes from. And so for me, being radical is understanding the root of like why we dance as a culture, not just like the Western reason of like studying a codified dance, doing it to be as a learned skill, but why do we dance? Why do we as a society want to dance? And for me, part of creating Soultry has allowed me to like uproot that meaning, because coming from a competitive dance background and doing dance as a career, I kind of got lost in the sauce. So with Soultry Sisters, we created something called Soulscape, where we get to understand the root of like why I want to move this way or why I want to move that way. It's not necessarily like finding the answer. It's just honoring how we feel in that moment. So for me, being radical is cutting the attachments that I have to like what I'm supposed to do as a choreographer, who I'm supposed to be as a dancer, and what I'm supposed to make and how I'm supposed to make work as an artist. So for me, that's a radical act of just choosing to exist in this body and honor the part in doing something that is from an intention place versus an aesthetic place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like similar in my journey and my field of like public health is like, that's why for me now I'm really passionate, or for since undergrad really, but like passionate about like looking at the root causes of dis-ease. So like that's really important for me, because like in my field, a lot of times people say like, oh, for example, like, oh, Black people or Black populations, Black communities have high rates of diabetes, or they have high rates of asthma. And like, but like from my perspective, like, but why? Like, it's not really the fact that our populations are doing XYZ thing, but a lot of times when you dig deeper at the root is because of oppression, like, and because of like state sanctioned violence and stuff. Like, why do our community have more asthma? It's like, oh, because there's like factories polluting the air around our communities and all that stuff. So it's not really because we're just prone to this. It's because there's these other like social and political economic factors. So that has also really pushed me and like what I do in my field to like highlight those actual underlying factors that so far right now isn't always talked about.
Yeah, so jumping to all of y'all who are live with us in the chat, we want to ask y'all, like, in your fields that you work in or in your life, like, what does being radical, what does that look like in a practice for you, and we want to ask that question. So we're curious to see what y'all say. I also wanted to add on, me being also a Pilates practitioner. I feel like me being a Pilates practitioner is very also aligned with being radical, because it's functional fitness. We only do exercises that make sense to our bodies in that moment. I work with a lot of people that have had previous injuries. I work with people who are trying to prevent injuries because they're athletes. And we're very radical in the practice of like, we're only going to do things that make sense to our bodies right now. We're going to listen to our bodies. And it's not about an exercise that looks good for Instagram. We do very simple, basic, stability or exercises so that you can do the other moves. So it's like the root, the foundation. So I think that's also how I radically teach Pilates.
Yeah, I like that too, that perspective. And I feel like I just want to throw this out there to the people viewing and who might watch the recording, like being radical or like doing something radical or thinking radical doesn't have to be a big thing. Like what we're saying is just like sometimes it can just be your thought process, like, oh, how you think about an issue, or like Alyssa said, like your approach to doing something. It can even just be like, oh, I'm staying true to my value of like, I don't know, in undergrad, I stopped eating like McDonald's fast food. And like, to me, that was a radical act because like I grew up on McDonald's. My family was eating McDonald's, and like friends in college would eat it because it was so cheap. And like, I would like, if friends want to go or family want to go, I'd be like, oh, I don't do that. And then they would ask. And then I guess kind of the radical type of act was more like stating my values and why it was important for me to not eat certain foods. So yeah, it was like kind of small, but it kind of trickled down to like a bigger effect, because then some people were like educated on like the food and fast food industry.
Yes, we have some comments from the chat, and I want to go ahead and highlight. Janelle shared, as an ESL teacher, I have to really give myself the time to decompress from the high energy it takes to educate young minds. Yes, yes. Understanding like the root of what you're doing, what you need in order to fulfill that job. Agreed. And then Chanel shares, I agree. For me, being radical means to embody self-representation. Woo, as you navigate positive changes within your lifestyle. Ooh,
Yes,
yes.
I
It
love
means to
that.
embody self-representation. It's
Mm-hmm.
one thing to stand and say, I'm representing myself, but to
Mm-hmm.
embody it, like that just adds
Mm-hmm.
a different touch to it. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, it was someone recently who I follow on Instagram was talking about just in their stories, like about embodying like where they're at in their journey right now. Something like that. That they stated it so simple, but it was so powerful to me. And Chanel's comment brings that up too, is that like in this whole movement, everything that we'll be talking about in today's conversation is like really embodying it. And that's kind of like practicing, what you say. And like that's the accountability too. So I think that's so important.
Yeah. And then I think going on with those two, it's like with Janelle and Chanel, it's like understanding that you are the root. You are the root. So if you're choosing to be positive, you're going to radiate that truth. And then Shayla adds, as a music educator, I'm really invested in my students' well-being, voices, and decisions that they make in their learning. To me, it's not radical, but then I hear how some students don't have many adults who can support them and listen to them. Yes. Yes.
Yes, that's so important because that's what I was saying. Like your radical act could be something small to you, but could have a big impact on other people. So that's why, like, we just really want this conversation to just get us thinking. Because sometimes, what comes natural to us and what we think is like normal, other people is radical because they don't necessarily do that or they don't choose to have these roles. But that's so important as well. So thanks for sharing that, Shayla.
I also think when I read that, Shayla, is like the root of you being a teacher is support, like being support for their voices, for how they feel, and in mentoring that creative expression, mentoring that, teaching a coping mechanism for them that they can take and use for years. So that is a radical act, to help someone else learn how to sustain themselves. That's beautiful. And Janelle added, let go of what no longer serves you is radical. Whoo! Let's say that one more time. Letting go of what no longer serves you is radical. I think there's always something to let go of, a constant challenge, but that also frees you up. Yes, because something doesn't serve you, that could be the root of how, like, of your any kind of emotion. Like if you're not letting go of something, it could be the underlying of why you're getting irritated, the underlying of why something is hard to get through. It's like, because there's really something else, but then bothering you. I'm not really saying that right, but I think, yeah, you said it perfectly.
Yeah, it's definitely radical to like let go, especially in this year with the pandemic. And I feel like so many different things have been heightened and like highlighted in your face. So it's like now is the time to really let go of those things because um, whether we wanted to or not, like we've been confronted with different issues and things popping up. So I feel like I've experienced a lot of letting go.
I also feel like that's part of like when I think about like generating joy. If we let go of what no longer serves us, we have more room to generate joy in our lives, all those kind of things. So I love that. Now we want to talk about soul care. So we talked about what radical means to us. And now we want to kind of unpack soul care. Earlier, we said for Soultry Sisters, soul care is very similar to self-care, except it's less based off of, consumerism and buying items and treating yourself to something that is external, but more of an internal practice that can be applied to any action, but it's building that intention. So we want to just talk about how we personally incorporate soul care in our routine. And then we want to hear from you, like how you personally incorporate soul care. So these activities that we call soul care are different activities and acts that help us sustain ourselves. It helps us find balance and alignment of our mind, body, and spirit. I was like, where's my head at? I was doing head, shoulders, and toes.
But yes, and like soul care for us, like Alyssa said, is that intentionality behind it. And it's also like the holistic aspect. So for us, soul care is not the superficial, but really diving deeper into, okay, like holistically, what is going to help me right now? And it's really about like asking yourself like what you need. So like for me, it depends. Like sometimes, especially in the beginning, the pandemic was like a lot of journaling and writing because there was like so much going on. I just to process, like writing helped me. And through that, like sometimes it would just be a spark of, I guess, creative writing. And then you guys see some of my poems on Instagram. But it's just like that's just a product of like soul care. And then also lately, like listening to music to just like move in my apartment and just like dance around, drinking tea. I just finished my tea. That's something I really love to do to like ground down, recharge, and also like uplift depending on what kind of like tea blend I'm drinking. And a lot like in the last few months has been sleeping and rest, which if you know me and like my grad school lifestyle, it's really hard, but at the same time, it's necessary to have like a clear brain for the stuff I have to read and learn. So rest has been important, and especially for like mental health, like resting has been good to kind of reset during those times.
For me, I agree. I think with the beginning of the pandemic for me was a lot of journaling because I had a lot of, we read the 4 agreements at the beginning of this year. So I had a lot of mitote madness. So mitote is like having a lot of stimulus in your brain, like a lot of fogginess in the brain. So I felt for me, writing down how I was feeling was very validating. And it was also a form of like what Janelle was saying of letting go. Like I write it down, I see it, and I'm like, whew, it's like it was a process for me. So definitely that was a soul care act that I did a heavier in the beginning of the year. And as the year has progressed, my soul care has looked like going outside. So like walking my dog, being outdoors, going for walks. And then as of late, starting from this weekend, it's been roller skating. So soul care doesn't always have to be an internal like reflection. It can be fun things like roller skating. It's just whatever you need to sustain your balance. And I feel like I started I went back to school this fall. I'm in an arts management certification. So my mind's like on the computer and very like working a certain way. I just need play. I need to like loosen my mind, loosen my brain. I need to laugh. So I've been watching some comedy stuff. I've been watching a lot of comedy on my TV. So that's my soul care. And I think the more and more I practice soul care, the more of a variety I allow myself to have. I don't just associate it with like a certain practice. I kind of just ask myself daily, like, what is it that I need today? And that's going to be the soul care.
Yeah, it definitely changes because like we've had different conversations like on our Soultry hangout on our Instagram, but like soul care changes on like my mood and what's happening around me. Because like sometimes I do like to meditate, other times I'm like no. Like there was many months in the summer where I was like reading in the morning and the evening, and now I haven't been doing that. And I've done other soul care practices, so it just it really depends on my mood. But I think it's really important to just like ask yourself like, okay, what do I need right now that's going to nourish like my mind, body, and soul? And then also like, why am I doing this? Because if you're just checking off a list, then that's not really soul care because you're not, like really giving to yourself and pouring into yourself. So it's really important for that as well.
Yes. I want to add this one. Delana, she shares, cooking is my radical soul care. I not only clear my mind, but I remind myself to nurture my body with food that tastes delicious and makes me feel good. Yes.
I love that. We just started our plant-based journey, me, Alyssa, and Soultry Mama. And when we started, we were cooking everything from scratch. And so I definitely was cooking a lot more, and that definitely was a soul care practice too. It's just a nice way to connect like Mama Earth, the earth, and plants, and then with your body, and spirit.
I didn't realize, I don't know about you, Delana, or also some other people on the chat, like I didn't realize how therapeutic cutting vegetables is. Like I love cutting vegetables. I'm getting better. I used to be horrible at cutting tomatoes. I would like squish them and not get the perfect thin slice. And then Janelle, shout out to Janelle, she taught me a really clutch way to cut an eggplant. Like you cut it diagonal. You cut it like the long way and then diagonal, so you get all the juices. So that's been part of my soul care too, is cutting vegetables. And then Chanel says, same here. I like to journal, watch stand-up comedy, and I recently got, look, we're all doing, see y'all. That's what I'm talking about. Yes. Yes, Shayla. Yes, I love cutting vegetables. Shayla, shout out to Shayla. She's been sharing on her Instagram her yummy, delicious meals.
Yay.
Girl, they look so good. They look so good. So sounds like a lot of us enjoy cooking and journaling.
And journaling, because also I'm not sure if I'm going to pronounce your name right, but Aline, I think Aline also shared that they like journaling as well.
Yes. Well, Janelle says, yes, I love cutting vegetables. It's an artwork and very meditative. Yes, very meditative for sure. And also too, like as Soultry Sisters, you know, beyond soul care, we like to talk about building a wellness ecosystem. And in that ecosystem, we talk about fulfilling our spiritual needs, fulfilling our basic needs, stability needs, and community needs. And so we wanted to kind of talk about that briefly and then bounce it to y'all. Like, what does your wellness ecosystem consist of? So we're going to kind of break that down by telling you what's in our ecosystem.
Yeah. So like when we think of our wellness ecosystem, if you've been to some of the recent Soultry events, we usually have this like circle and then we break it up into quadrants. So to 4 parts, and then like stability is in 1, basic needs, community needs, and spiritual needs. So you can kind of think of it as like 4 quadrants of a circle. So for me, like my basic needs, like I mentioned, was like sleep, like especially the last few months, just like really sleeping. I notice a difference if I don't sleep as much. And then also drinking water. Like I drink so many of my like mason jars a day of water because like I've also noticed a difference with that. And then also shifting to a plant-based vegan diet and eating habits have been like great. I feel like it's just a really good thing for my body and mind right now. And then for stability needs for me, that I'm thinking of that right now as like support. So like having like my Soultry community, and then I have like friends here in the DC area. And then when I'll be back at home for the holidays, like, you know, being with family and stuff, that's what I'm thinking of as stability, especially with the pandemic. I feel like there's always that back of my mind of like, oh, unsure, unknowing about like everything going on. So that's been like on the top of my mind. And then community for me is kind of more like active, active word. So like community is like engaging in these kind of conversations and on Instagram, especially during this pandemic. Like I know some people like social media is not really helpful for them, but I have been able to find ways to have social media be like beneficial and supportive for me by following people who like is also passionate about the stuff I'm passionate about, who have conversations like this on their IG stories, on live. And then also community has been those who have like reached out when I like voice that like I'm going through something or stuff is happening in my life, and who have like actively been there. So I feel like to me, community is like active. And then spiritual has just been like just grounding down and connecting to the earth whenever I can. So in the summer, I would like read my book outside. And then like last weekend or the weekend before, I went to North Carolina to go hiking. So I was just outside the whole time, just hiking around like mountains and waterfalls. And that really helps me like ground down and connect. So that's kind of what I prioritize, is like being outside in nature for spiritual.
And when we talk about building a wellness ecosystem, we're talking about building, addressing the needs to sustain ourselves. So when we usually talk about the ecosystem, we don't have like definitive lines. They're they're very light because things can interchange, things can overlap. And when you feel imbalanced in one, you can notice like what you have in the other. For instance, like right now, a lot of people's stability needs aren't being met because stability needs is like your job, your school, your work, and also community needs. A lot of people, because of this pandemic, are in isolation, so they're not going to school, they're not going to their normal social gatherings and stuff like that. So when we think about building a wellness ecosystem, it's understanding like where are we low and where can we bring it up. So for me at this time, because I wasn't working for a long time at the beginning of the year, and because I wasn't going to my normal dance classes, I had to really rev up on my spiritual needs. So part of spiritual needs is not just like, faith-based. Spiritual needs was like journaling. Spiritual needs was being out in nature. For me, spiritual needs was also, using positive thought and affirmation cards and stuff like that. And then basic needs is like food, shelter, water, rest, all those things. So they're all connected. So when we to ask you guys, when you're thinking about your wellness ecosystem, you don't have to answer all of them, but maybe pick a category, pick a needs category, and let us know what that looks like for you, because we want to know. For me, the basic needs in my wellness ecosystem currently that I've been focusing on in my basic needs, I've been really focusing, like Toni was saying, sleep. I've been focusing on also kind of countering all the time I've been spending online and just going outside and like looking at the trees, like looking at actual things in front of me versus a screen. And then my stability needs, I've definitely been leaning on my relationships, my personal relationships with friends, and then community needs. This past month, I started going back to dance class. So I felt like more connected with my body, connected to my dance community. We had to move it outside, but the fact that it still continues means that I can still have that need met. And then spiritual needs, lately for me, my spiritual needs actually has been like dancing and listening to my favorite like playlist. It's been like being in my own space and creating that safe space for me within my mind. And I've been doing, I'm a part of a meditation group, and I just started it this past Tuesday. So that's been like a way that I can practice with a group, being mindful and practicing meditation. So it can look different. I just kind of told y'all what I'm practicing right now.
Mm-hmm. And also for basic needs, like in the pandemic, I became a plant mom. Well, I already had plants, but I became like a plant mom. Like I inherited and bought so many plants. But plants are good like for like the physical environment because they clean the air. So like that's helping with basic needs. But then they also provide, like mental health benefits and stuff like that. And it's just nice because like if I were to bring you guys to like my common area, it just looks like a jungle. I have all my monsteras, my aloe, and all these other plants I just love, which I'm really sad to leave here on the way, but my roommate will take care of them. But yeah, so even something like having plants and stuff can be a part of your wellness ecosystem.
Yeah, and Toni like lives in a high rise, so bringing the outdoors in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I live in a city.
She's a nature woman. Okay, she loves hikes and nature. So as the year progressed this year, I'm like, you just bring it out. The outdoor in.
My snake plant. And then I DIY painted the pot. So I was like, not only basic needs, but like creative needs too.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And so today, aside from talking about building a wellness ecosystem, we want to talk about Deepa Iyer's social change ecosystem. And Deepa Iyer is an activist and educator, and her social change framework is a tool to bring us in alignment with our roles and values. It is a catalyst for self-awareness and understanding that we can actively be a part of something bigger than ourselves. So y'all, we got to the point we're going to be talking about the meaty part. Is it social change ecosystem? So before we get into the nitty-gritty about what makes up the social change ecosystem, we wanted to talk about what is social change and what does that mean to us? And so for us, social change is touching on building solidarity. It's about building equity. It's about building towards liberation. It's talking about all those things. So when we talk about social change, those are the values as a community that we are working towards. And today we're going to be talking about the roles that we play in this social change ecosystem. Can y'all see that screen?
Yeah, I can see it. Like, you guys can comment if you are having difficulty seeing it. Yeah, Alyssa, are you able to share the link with people too, or is that
Yeah, I can
not
share the
possible?
link too. Let me share the
Okay.
link so then y'all can pull it up if you're on your computer. It'll be easy to see.
Yeah, but I had found this ecosystem graphic and like more about it a few months ago. Like, someone had posted it, and so I looked more into it, and I was like, oh, this is awesome. Like, I think this is a great way to kind of reflect. It's like I felt it was a great exercise to self-reflect on where I felt my role was in the movement. I think I found it, especially when it was like the protests, like the BLM protest, Black Lives Matter protest. And even before I found the framework, I had asked, I think I was telling like my sister and some of my friends, like, oh, like I'm really reflecting and journaling on like what I want to tell like my kids, grandkids, future family members, like what role I played in making change in the world around me and in my community. And so I was already kind of thinking of like where I fall. But once I found this framework, I was like, oh, I have like the words to describe some of the stuff I was sharing with some of my friends. But to me, it helped kind of reassure during a time when I feel like everything was just like up in the air and like what's going on, to kind of ground down and be like, okay, I know these are my strengths. I know this is what I do, and I know this is what I can give and support to others in my community.
Definitely. I do remember that conversation. I remember we actually, as Soultry Sisters, we didn't do programming for an entire month. We were really trying to figure out how we were best suited to support our community, and how would we best suit supporting ourselves and sustaining ourselves. And so when Toni sent me this on Instagram, it provided us a language and to identify where we found our strengths, and also identify how we could play a role in social change, because that was being demanded. It's always been asked, but I think this year it's been a question that everyone has faced in asking themselves. I feel like I've heard a lot of my friends and family ask themselves, like, what is it that I can do? So with this social change ecosystem, we want to kind of talk about that. We're going to be talking about it more during our workshop. We'll talk about that more at the end. But today we wanted to take some time to reflect in front of you ourselves what the roles we play. So I'm going to go over each of them so I can describe them to you, and then you can share with us the role on the social change ecosystem that you identify most with currently. So weavers are people who see the through lines of connections. So weavers are usually activists. They see the through lines of a problem and like policies that need to happen, changes that need to happen. They're the ones who speak out. They're the ones who plan, then they're the ones who organize. And then experimenters, they see a gap and invent. So people who are experimenters are people who are leaders of mutual aid associations. They see a problem and they create a solution right then and there. Those are experimenters. Frontline responders, those are healthcare workers, but not just strictly healthcare food workers. That can be also food banks. So these are people who are directly responding to like needs that are right now, which are hunger and health. Visionaries are people who are as a role of people who give us hope. These tend to be writers. So today in today's talk, we talked about Angela Davis and some of her quotes that inspire us. So usually visionaries are people who inspire us to think of, keep looking past now and on forward. Builders are ready to implement. Those are organizers. So I consider builders to be Hill Street Country Club, people who are ready to implement programs to support right now. Like one of my first activities I participated at the Hill Street Country Club was a protest poster making event. So organizations that are ready to implement programs for change and to support the community directly. I also think that Soultry Sisters are builders. We're ready to implement things that support us and our community. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Then there are caregivers, so caregivers are people who are taking care of those in need. And right now, those people can also be people who are making masks because we need them. At some point, we didn't have enough. And so people are making something that we need. People are giving something that we need. Also, again, caregivers can be food banks. It could be people who are creating fundraisers to give to those in need. Disruptors are people who are shaking up the status quo, people who are speaking out. So those who are disruptors. And then healers, people who tend to trauma, people with empathy. So healers can be people who are holding space for others to grieve at this time. Healers are people who are holding space for people to generate their joy at this time. So healers are people who have space to help you process emotionally. Storytellers are people who document the current times using art, music, and movement. So at Hill Street Country Club, we have a whole bunch of storytellers. In this live right now, we have some storytellers as well. And so the last one is guides. Guides have discernment. Guides have also the third eye, if y'all are familiar with the chakras. But all in all, guides are also teachers, educators, people who are educating us on, the policies, for the election. People are educating us on places we can go to get tests and sorts. Educators, teachers, guides are the teachers in schools right now. So those are the different types of roles. So after going through the different roles in the social change ecosystem, we want to bounce it back to y'all in our community. What role resonates with you the most? What roles do you identify with and play currently right now?
Yeah, and it could be one role, it could be multiple roles. But yeah, so feel free to share in the chat. When I first found this ecosystem framework, I found myself in 3 roles. So I see myself as a weaver, so someone who weaves together people and partners to do specifically like my public health work, but also what I do with Soultry, so in the community. And then also like a visionary, so envisioning like an equitable and health-filled and purposeful future for everyone. That's something I envision and definitely leads or motivates the work that I do. And then also being a builder, like Alyssa said. So it's like creating accessible programs and resources in my public health work, but also in the wellness work I do with Soultry, to provide like collective healing, collective liberation, and for creating transformative systems. So those are the 3 that I felt most called to. But I do know that like at different situations and with different people, sometimes other roles will pop up, but I think those are the most prominent for me.
Yeah, and I also want to I want to tell y'all that when we talk about these roles, we also mean in your family, in your friendships, in your workplace, in your social communities, in this greater community of Oceanside, San Diego, DC, around the world, Seoul, Korea. So when we talk about your roles, it's not necessary. It can be in any of those ecosystems: work, home, friends. So yeah, we want to learn what y'all's roles are. For me, I see myself as one storyteller for sure. Definitely as an artist. I feel like my role as a social conscious artist is to not only honor my truth and tell my story, but also talk about the current times. I call like big T, little t. So as an artist, the big T is like the full spectrum of what's going on in this world, and the little t is what's going on in my little world. So as a storyteller, I like to honor both of them. I like to find the intersectionality between what's going on in the world and what's going on with me, because I believe that's the human experience. As we are living in this world, we're also adjacent to what's going on in this world. And as an artist, I like to capture those different moments through movement, music, and all those kind of things. Let's see. I also see myself as a guide, especially as a Pilates practitioner. My intention is to help people know their bodies better, empower people to feel strong in their bodies. So that's where I feel myself as the biggest guide, is in my Pilates practice, really helping people identify their strengths and also observe their weaknesses. Notice I said observe their weakness. Like, oh, she's kind of weak on the left today. And just really learning to build that inner guide of how to function with your movement. And those are the main two that I have. And I would say builder also, with building Soultry Sisters with my sister. I think we're definitely builders, and we definitely created Soultry to build in our community. So we have some people who've shared their roles. I want to pull them up. We have Janelle, I think visionary also, and I relate to storyteller. Yes, tell us more. Tell us more. I definitely see you as a storyteller through Color Eats, Janelle. Telling stories of how you take something from your family garden and then transform it into a beautiful meal. That to me is also storytelling. Yeah.
And even I see it kind of in a way like a caregiver, like maybe not like directly to people, but like you're helping people care for themselves through like the knowledge you share, Janelle. So that's something I thought of. But yeah, if like this short exercise, like you're starting to think, but you're still not sure maybe what role, this is a plug for our Saturday event, because we'll be going more in depth and doing more interactive exercises to reflect. So before we even ask your role, we'll be reflecting on more of like internally, like, okay, like what kind of things are important to you, what kind of change you want to make in your community. And then that kind of will help guide you to find what roles fits you the most right now, and then do more activities after that to kind of reflect and see where we are after. So yeah, that's kind of just a plug. If you're kind of like, oh, I am on a start, but I don't know where to go, or I'm having trouble, then definitely join us this Saturday.
Yes, we'd love to see you. Let's see what Chanel said. Chanel says, I see myself as a healer and a guide. I'm really driven to help people around me and love providing any resources I know to assist others. Yes.
Yes. And I know Chanel, and I know that right now she's aspiring to be a therapist and to help others, guide others. So when she says guide, I'm like, yes, I see that, because I know from what she's passionate about doing, that also is in there. So also, if you don't know exactly, like maybe these words don't resonate, like guide, storyteller, but also reflect on like, what do I like to do? What am I good at? What do people ask me for help in? Like, that really helps me. Like, oh, a lot of people ask me for info. So I feel like I am a guide sometimes too, like kind of educating people, because they will ask me to explain certain things. So yeah, that's another way to think about it.
Yes, and we have Shayla. I feel like I'm a mix of experimenter, weaver, and guide. I'm always taking risks, just seeing how something goes, learning, then doing it better. I like to connect people and look at micro and macro. Yes, I love to teach. Yes, Shayla, I love that. And Shayla's also a creative entrepreneur. She has her own music teaching business. So when you say I'm always taking risks, that is it. Yeah, and seeing how something goes. And girl, you're shining. You're doing great. Yes, I love that, experimenter. That's the first time I've had someone say they felt they were experimenter in our chat.
Nice.
Like now, and then also too, what's helping me too with this whole social change ecosystem is when someone defines a role and I know them, it almost helps me understand that definition a little bit better too. Because I feel like, when you look at a word and you see a definition, you're like, what does that mean? And so I think also to talk about our workshop on Saturday, it's going to be helpful to hear people describe how they relate to these different roles, because maybe you might see yourself differently in a role as well.
Yeah, because like when you're talking about Shayla sharing how she's an experimenter through like the work that she does, through the definition of experimenter, like, oh, seeing a gap and inventing something. I think the work I do as a research now, like a public health researcher, is a lot of like inventing things that aren't existing. You know, that's what research is. So it's something that I've been doing for like a year now, and we'll be doing another year. But it's not something that I guess I naturally thought I would do, but it's a part of my lifestyle now.
Yes. And also Stanley Jr., he's our cousin, help with older people when other people cannot do it by themselves. Yes. Yes.
So maybe caregiver.
That sounds like caregiver to me. Definitely. Definitely.
Yeah. And so for Soultry, we created our platform as a way to create opportunities for creative expression and collective healing. And so, you know, now having this framework, we kind of know our roles in creating this community, but it definitely was from a place of like, okay, we want to make an impact. And so I guess that's that social change. So we definitely have that at the root of what we do.
Yeah, and when we talk about making an impact, when we thought about creating Soultry Sisters, we're only thinking about how do we want to impact ourselves. We started with ourselves, and then it grew into what it is now. So when it comes to building, you know, on these roles, it can also be like, what role do you need? What role do you need to see? And in that way, and also the way of asking yourself, like, what do people mostly ask me for? So those are two ways to access your roles. And then one other quote that we want to share with you before the end of the talk today is, without community, there is no liberation. And this was written by Audre Lorde. And that's what when we talk about building a community and playing a role in social change, this quote comes to mind.
And so we wanted to ask you all, like now talking about like your roles and what's important to you, like if there's specific like initiatives and things that you are passionate about in your community, that, you know, you wanted to share with us, and maybe how your role plays a role in kind of creating that impact.
I'll add that to the banner. Are there initiatives that you are passionate about? For us at Soultry, are the initiatives that we're passionate about, we've been talking about it for half of this live, which is Soulcare. We're definitely passionate about finding and honoring the different ways we want to personally sustain ourselves. But we also are passionate about how we sustain each other as a community. So sisterhood is really, really big for us. So we're always thinking about different ways we can sustain ourselves, and through sisterhood, our community. And the last initiative we're passionate about is sustainability. And when we talk about sustainability, if you've been a part of our Soultry community, you know we're talking about fashion, we're talking about sustainability in our food, we're talking about sustainability in our environment, all those things. So those are the initiatives that we're passionate about. But the umbrella of everything that we're passionate about is building intention within ourselves, and then also building intentionally to create a relationship with our community. And that's why we are partners with the Hill Street Country Club, because it's in our hometown of Oceanside. That's why we're passionate about bringing arts and wellness programs to our community, and specifically to women of color, because we want to be able to not only see ourselves more in the arts and wellness industry, we want to be able to affirm ourselves in spaces. We want to be able to unapologetically exist, and that is radical soul care to me.
Yeah, and like going back to radical soul care, like also like knowing your role can also help in knowing how to take care of yourself. So if you're, you know, a guide, always like, you know, maybe giving information, giving education, maybe you need some time by yourself, to, recuperate and restore. Or if you are a storyteller, maybe you're always telling your story, but maybe sometimes also good for you to soak up energy from other people. So like go to other events, hear stories from other people as well. So I think that's important too, to like kind of full circle, bring it back, is like, oh, so it's not only what role you're doing out in your community and what impact, but also like how are you taking care of yourself? Because that's what's really important about this series for us too, is like how to sustain ourselves during this whole movement. So Black Lives Matter movement, also during the pandemic, like how are you sustaining yourself, and all the other social justice issues, because of course there is many, many, many more than the ones that we even bring up.
Yeah. I think also the bigger picture too for building a social change ecosystem, we talk about Soultry and all these roles, is existing within a larger ecosystem. Like, so Soultry, we're an arts and wellness collective. So that's what we do. We do that well. And for us, like this year, we've made an intention to collaborate with other organizations that specify in mental health, and we've done soul sessions with mental health professionals. We've also partnered with healers, and we're also partnering with community art spaces like Hill Street Country Club. So with building an ecosystem for social change, it's not only standing in our purpose and our strength, it's sharing that abundantly, but also connecting to other people to further amplify the cause of solidarity, equity, liberation, and justice. We have to do it together. So we have to like combine all of our strengths so that we can create these ripples. So for me, I might not be the frontline responder, but as Soultry Sisters, an arts and wellness collective, we can collaborate, we can support, we can build awareness. And that's kind of like how we build our programs. We're either creating a workshop that allows people to empower themselves, or we're bringing awareness by talking about it on our social media handles. It's all about finding ways to connect information to other people and also collaborate.
And also like through sustaining ourselves, like as Soultry, something that really drove us to create our platform was the need for community. And we feel like that's also so important right now in the movement, is communal care. So not only about like your individual soul care and what that is for you, but communal, like what do we need as a community? And your community can be fluid and flexible, so whatever that means to you. But especially this year with Soultry, like we have really leaned into our community, listened to everyone. And so we started different like programs like soul sessions, which is more of just partnering with different healers, therapists, counselors, to have an open space to just talk and let it out. And then sometimes we'll do like an activity to kind of channel whatever energy came up. But also it was like, oh, let's just take a break. And that's what our community needed, was a break. And then now responding to our community, and then they wanted to learn more about how do we, create this change that we want to see. So community has been such a big part of the work that we do. So that Audre Lorde quote, that without community, there's no liberation, really resonates, because, we wouldn't be here without you all. And like, we're all in this like work and in this movement together.
Yes. I also wanted to add some people who commented in the chat. We have Amarachi here. She says, just came in, but caught this question. But healthy families is a passion for me. Raising healthy children, mental health for the family, especially for marginalized, underprivileged families. Yes, yes, that is a part of the ecosystem, is holistic child care, holistic family care. That's communal care. That's beautiful, Amarachi. Thanks for being here.
Yes, so important. And so, yes, I'm so glad that everyone was sharing, what like roles they play and what impact they want to have in their community, what impact they are having in the community, because I know all of us are doing this work, whether or not we're sharing it or not, we are.
Yes, we have one more too. I'm really invested in learning from others, seeing inspiring talks and workshops like this, and holding space for others. I can better support others when I've taken time to learn about myself. Ooh! And who I'm trying to support: artists, teachers, admins, BIPOC nonprofit folks. Knowledge sustains me. Ooh, Shayla, that was good. Knowledge sustains me. pouring into the self. And I think we kind of talked about that earlier about like coming from an abundant place, you know, like if we pour into ourselves, we can give freely. And so I think that also goes into radical self-care, to wrap it in the bow, like the root. So if we take care of ourselves, we can take care of our community. If we take care of our community, they will take care of us.
Yes, so it's definitely, you know, holistic, it is reciprocal, and it's so important, especially right now and with this heightened awareness, to really dive deeper into creating routines and creating communities that have these values that we are all sharing today. And so, yeah, on Saturday, we'll just be sharing more about the soul care, and we'll be doing some other soul care activities that are really exciting. So we'll be doing some mindful meditation, some journaling, some creative expression. So if you've been to our Soultry events, we're doing that as well, just as a way to not only like go through the roles, but then also more elaborate on like how can we sustain ourselves, and we'll be sharing some of our favorites.
Yes, I can't wait to see you there. I also wanted to share, thank y'all so much for being so interactive. I want to share two more here. Amarachi says, and I do so by continuing to build my childcare business into what I want to add into the community to help build that collective healing space for families. I love that. And I don't think there can be enough of collective healing and creative expression. I don't think there can be enough of these community conversations and workshops. So if you are a leader in community, like, please join us for this workshop, and then share it with your family, share it with your friends, share it with everybody. I think this is a beautiful community that we're having here. So thank you so much for sharing that. And then Chanel, I am passionate about wellness overall, wellness within family and friends, sustaining positive relationships with loved ones, and providing my community endless love and support. Again, that goes to the root. You know, you focusing on yourself, focusing on your friends, focusing on your family, it will radiate out, you know. And I think when you focus on self first, you can build that capacity to help your community, to help further than your arms can reach. So the more we work on sustaining ourselves, we can stretch. We build that fluidity. The more we understand the different roles we can play, the different roles we haven't played, we can build an intention to go in that direction, to be able to have that ability to step into other roles, because we are a community and this is an ecosystem. So thank you so much for joining us. Again, I just want to plug that Saturday, November 21st, we're having our collaboration with Hill Street Country Club and Radical Soul Care Workshop from 12 to 1:30 p.m. PST. You can sign up with our link in bio.
You could just go to radicalsoulcare.eventbrite.com.
I'm actually going to put it in the chat right now. Here's it in the chat.
So radicalsoulcare.eventbrite.com is in the chat. You can sign up. There's a few spots left. But if it does fill up and you're not able to sign up, you could just message us and then we can add you into like a wait list type of thing. But yeah, it's free and it will also be recorded. So if you want the info, sign up and we will send you the recording after. It's going to be a great workshop. It's going to be interactive. It's going to have soul care aspects. It's going to have the ecosystem aspects. And it'll have a lot more opportunities for you all to share. It's Zoom, so you can share like your face, your voice, if you feel free to do so. So thank you all for joining us again. It was so great to have this conversation with you all. And let anyone know that missed it, that they can watch the recording as well.
Yes. All right. Bye. Have a good night, everyone.
See you all Saturday.